This is the most unruly class in the whole school. Every student in the class is a troublemaker. They either wear strange outfits or have their hair dyed bright yellow. The lady teacher asks everyone to mind their behavior, but the students aren't the least bit afraid. They glare at her fiercely. One of the boys with long hair even throws a tennis ball at her. Yet, what the students don't know is that this seemingly gentle woman is no ordinary person. Her name is Taboo. She grew up in a powerful criminal family. Although Taboo has trained in martial arts since childhood, she has no desire to inherit the family's underworld empire. Her only wish is to become a teacher of the people. One day, a plane from Hong Kong to Japan is about to land when it's hijacked by a gang of villains. All the passengers are terrified, daring not to make a sound. Only Taboo remains completely unfazed. She ignores the threats of the villains and continues daydreaming in peace. But when one of the villains starts shouting insults at an elderly passenger, Taboo's sense of justice is stirred. She decides to teach these fiends a lesson in respect. By the time a large force of police arrives, the villains are already regretful, kneeling and begging for mercy, as if they've just been through a horrifying ordeal. The news media covers the incident widely, and the teachers at the school finally realize how fearsome Taboo is. The principal rushes to find Taboo afterward, begging her not to reveal her identity. If it were known that the eldest daughter of a criminal family was hiding in their school as a teacher, both would be dismissed immediately. But soon enough, trouble comes knocking. A gang of thugs waits outside the school gates, threatening to settle a score with a student named Lian Tai. It turns out a few days earlier, some thugs tried extorting a classmate on the street, and Lian Tai stepped in to help. He gave them a good beating. Now the gang has come to the school, seeking revenge. The principal is so frightened he's trembling. He hides under the desk and calls the police. Only when the police arrive do the gang members finally leave. Afterward, the principal, without a word, gives Lian Tai and his friends a scolding. To avoid trouble for the school, he decides to expel them all. At this critical moment, Taboo steps in to speak for them. She insists that it was the gang who bullied the students, not that they were causing trouble outside school. She even personally vouched for them, hoping the principal would give them another chance. If the gang ever came to cause trouble again, she promised to resign as their teacher. Taboo's kindness deeply moved these rebellious youths. They were a group of students the school had given up on. No teacher had ever cared for them or shown concern. Yet Taboo was risking her job for them. Lian Tai felt a storm of emotions within. He knew the gang wouldn't let this go, but he didn't want to lose such a good teacher. So he decided to confront the gang alone. When Taboo heard of this, she was furious. She didn't blame Lian Tai for being rash, but rather was disappointed that his so-called friends didn't step in to help. Heartbroken, she hurried to the gang's lair. At that moment, Lian Tai was surrounded and being beaten. Though outnumbered, he refused to yield. Just as they were about to finish him off, Taboo arrived. She declared herself as Lian Tai's teacher and demanded they release him at once. But the gang, confident in their numbers, didn't take her seriously. Since words didn't work, she decided to fight. With swift moves, she dodged their attacks and took them down one by one. Seeing her strength, the gang fled in a panic. Seeing her fighting skills, the gang scattered in terror and fled. At this moment, the students, worried about their teacher, arrived as well. The so-called good friends who hadn't stepped in before apologized to Lian Tai. But Lian Tai had a question on his mind. He had never seen a teacher who could fight like that, and couldn't help but feel curious about Taboo's true identity. But Taboo brushed it off, saying it didn't matter. What mattered was that she wanted to protect her students. After this incident, the students' attitude towards her changed greatly. After all, in these times of selfish ambition, a teacher willing to go all out for her students was hard to come by. However, not long after, a new problem arose. Two police officers suddenly came to the school asking questions. It turned out that a few days earlier, Taboo's former student Feng Jian had been accused of involvement in a drug deal. He had fled custody and was now in hiding. But the police's claims didn't convince Taboo at all. She knew her student well and believed that Feng Jian would never do such a thing. However, the police had found Feng Jian's wallet at the scene of the deal, surrounded by scattered white powder. So, naturally, Feng Jian was the prime suspect. Thus, Feng Jian became the prime suspect. In the face of such solid evidence, Taboo still chose to believe in her student. So, she handed the class over to a substitute teacher and set off to find Feng Jian herself, determined to get to the bottom of this. All her old classmates came to help when they heard the news. They, too, couldn't believe he would do such a thing. Then, they searched every place Feng Jian might be hiding, one by one. Finally, they found him in a classroom. At first, when questioned, Feng Jian was evasive, not giving a straight answer, because he didn't want to cause Taboo any trouble. Back in high school, he had been seen as a delinquent. It was Taboo's persistence and patience that had put him on the right path in life. It was her unwavering support that set him on the right path in life. Now that he's graduated, he doesn't want to be a burden to his teacher like a child. Under Taboo's firm insistence, Feng Jian finally revealed the truth. After graduating, he hadn't found a job. Through a friend's introduction, he took on a part-time job as a runner. All he had to do was deliver packages to specified places, and he could earn 30,000 a night. To ease his financial burdens, Feng Jian didn't think too much about it. But, to his horror, the package contained white powder. Just at that moment, the police arrived, having received a tip-off. In a panic, he fled, accidentally leaving his wallet at the scene. He knew he couldn't explain this away, and was terrified of getting caught, so he went into hiding. Upon learning the truth, Taboo didn't blame Feng Jian, but instead taught him a lesson. In this world, there's no such thing as easy money. One shouldn't be blinded by wealth, for there are things that money can't buy. That night, Taboo took Feng Jian to her own home and used her family's influence to investigate who was behind using him to transport drugs. Soon, her contacts informed her that the boss behind this group was a man named Taro. He had nearly gone bankrupt from a failed business, but revived himself through drug trafficking. They usually target young people who are inexperienced and use them to commit crimes. It's low cost and low risk. Taro is highly ambitious. Recently, he's even running for a government seat to gain power. Faced with such scum, Taboo decided she must expose his crimes. Her godfather advised her to give it up, as this opponent was too powerful. But to prevent more innocent people from being harmed, she was determined to see it through. However, before she could take action, the students had already gone to Taro's company headquarters, hoping to find evidence to bring him to justice. It turns out they had overheard Taboo's conversation with her contacts. They hid behind a car to avoid security and slipped inside the building. After some searching, they finally found a stash of drugs, hidden in a concealed ventilation duct. But before they could escape, Taro's men caught them. Luckily, Taboo arrived just in time, knocking out a few gang members and rescuing them. Meanwhile, Taro was holding a grand press conference, inviting media to boost his election campaign. If he managed to win a government seat, he would surely use his power to commit even more crimes. Time was running out. Taboo told the students to stay back, while she wanted to put an end to it. Just as Taro was about to succeed, Taboo suddenly burst through the doors, exposing his true, ugly nature in front of everyone. At the same time, their confrontation was broadcasted on live television, shocking viewers everywhere. Taro tried to deny everything, claiming he knew nothing of the sort, but the students revealed his drug stash, broadcasting it live for all to see. In an instant, his carefully crafted reputation crumbled. The crowd began to flee the scene, with nothing left to lose. An enraged Taro dropped his facade and sent his best fighters after Taboo. Despite her martial prowess, she was overwhelmed by their numbers. After a few rounds, she began to lose ground. In that critical moment, her old friend Xiaotian arrived to help, but he was quickly knocked down as well. They threatened to kill Xiaotian if Taboo resisted any further. Taboo had no choice but to surrender. They threatened Xiaotian's life, forcing her not to resist. Taboo had no choice but to surrender. She endured their brutal beating over and over. Just as it seemed Taboo was about to meet her end, Feng Jian arrived with all her old classmates. The gang members froze, intimidated. Seeing the students rush forward, Taboo quickly shouted to stop them. She couldn't let them get involved in this fight, and didn't want them to have any stains on their records. So, Taboo stood up again. At that moment, she looked like a deity. With a few swift punches and kicks, she took down every gang member. Seeing that all was lost, Taro pulled out a gun and aimed at Taboo, ready to go down fighting. But Taboo wasn't afraid. She spoke passionately, telling him that even though he had wealth, his own followers had abandoned him in a time of crisis. Some things, she said, could never be bought with money, like the loyalty of her students. Her words struck a chord with Taro. In that moment, his resolve wavered. Just then, a group of police officers burst in. In a panic, Taro raised his gun once more. Seeing that she might be shot, Taboo leapt in front of him without hesitation. She pleaded with the police to give him a second chance. Taro was deeply moved by her kindness. He dropped the gun and stopped resisting. Before being taken away, he looked enviously at the students and said, "You are truly fortunate." At that moment, Lien Tai, who had seen it all on TV, arrived with all the students. Each of them was concerned for their teacher's safety. Taboo was touched by their actions. At that moment, she felt that her efforts had finally borne fruit. This, too, was the true meaning of her calling as a teacher. With the media coverage, Taboo became a hero in the city. Even the principal now admired her greatly. But Taboo cared little for such praise. Her true wish was to guide these wayward students back onto the right path. She hoped each one would have a bright future. This film is Taboo Sensei. Though the story may seem cheesy, it leaves a fulfilling feeling. At its heart, it's an inspirational tale. If you enjoy movies like this, it's worth a watch.